Welcome on in, WIP Daily. Joe Giglio with you. Hope everyone out there had a great weekend. Crazy weekend. I mean, a ton of stuff going on. The women's championship, Dawn Staley wins again. Phillies take 2 out of 3. The Sixers continue to play really good basketball. Nick Nurse is an incredible coach, and they're executing at a high level when they have to here to get these wins and push for that 6th seed. Flyers struggling down the stretch. Of course, we're a couple weeks away from the draft. WrestleMania here in Philadelphia. The City Connect uniforms. We got a solar eclipse today, which I have glasses that my kids gave me. I'm not sure if these are going to work or not, or going to blind my eyes, but whatever. A lot going on right now. But one thing that caught my attention over the weekend that I think is about to become a big thing or could become a big thing, and that was the comments by a radio host down in Dallas on 105.3 The Fan down there about Micah Parsons. And the feeling, according to him, that he's heard within the Cowboys about Parsons. And I just want to give some context on this. Parsons has been a Cowboy for 3 years. And during that entire time, and I'm not sure how long this dates back, but for years now, Jerry Jones does a weekly hit on this show. So when a host that has a weekly hit with Jerry Jones says he's hearing things coming out of the Cowboys, my eyebrows are raised because, okay, now I'm not saying it's coming from Jerry Jones directly, but this show and these hosts have obviously a direct pipeline to the owner of the Cowboys and to probably many other people within the organization. So here was the quote, headline, Sportsradio reports just Micah Parsons has worn thin with the Dallas Cowboys. And here was the quote from Friday. Quote, I've heard from way too many people this offseason. I'm talking about at least 4 different people have told me that Micah has worn thin there. I don't know how much is true and how much it actually hurts his reputation. I don't know whether this is the behavior of a typical superstar. I don't know how damaging it is, but all I know is this. I've heard from way too many people that if Micah Parsons was out of there, there would be a decent amount of people inside the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco smiling or breathing a sigh of relief. So obviously there's trouble in paradise between Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys. How much of this is real? How much of this is conjecture? How much of this is they're trying to get ahead of him probably asking for a record-breaking contract on the defensive side and trying to throw some mud on his side? I don't know. But I do know this. The Dallas Cowboys have cap issues. The Dallas Cowboys have a quarterback that is about to be in his walk year, and they haven't re-signed him. The Cowboys' future is I'd say, pretty shaky right now in terms of what they're going to be 2, 3, 4 years from now. If the Cowboys deem that Parsons is a headache, Parsons wants too much money, they don't have money, it's hard for them to allocate, let's say, $100 million per year on the cap or close to it for Parsons and Dak Prescott, and they're willing to move on, Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles have to try to make this happen. I understand how weird it is trying to say, let's go make a trade with the Cowboys. Let's give the Cowboys something of value. This is Micah Parsons we're talking about. And I'm not disputing the idea he might be a headache. He might be a diva. I think he's kind of goofy when you hear him talk. He has his podcast. We sometimes play clips on the show of his takes on whatever. I think it's kind of weird and goofy when current players have podcasts commenting on the league they play in. I understand they're getting their next career ready. Darius Slay does this here in Philadelphia. Kelsey was doing it. But I just think it's a little goofy when Parsons comments on stuff around the league. So I could see why some people might be rubbed the wrong way with Micah Parsons. But here's what I do know. And here's what are facts right now. There's been no sort of legal issues with Micah Parsons. He's not in any sort of significant trouble. He just may be annoying, or he may be a lot, or he may be, maybe he acts like a diva. But the second thing I know is since the guy got in the league, there's been no more consistently dominant pass rusher in the NFL. We're talking about a guy, and this is his first 3 years. This isn't his middle of his career. It's not his prime. It's the first 3 years of his career. Micah Parsons, All-Pro first team, All-Pro first team, All-Pro second team, Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl. He has hit the quarterback 89 times. He has 51 tackles for loss, and he has 40 and a half sacks in his 3 years in the National Football League. 40 and a half, 13 and a half, 14. We're talking about one of the premier edge rushers in terms of the day they walk in the league to start a career that we've ever seen, ever. That's how good Micah Parsons is. If you go around the NFL and you ask people, you could have one defender for the next 10 years, I believe people would take Micah Parsons. Myles Garrett's a great player, had probably a better year last year. He's a little bit older. I think people would take Parsons over him, but that would be, maybe he's the one people would take over Parsons. Maybe he's the one. I believe people would take Parsons for the next 5 to 10 years over a TJ Watt, over a Max Crosby, over a Nick Bosa. That's how good this guy is. He doesn't come off the field. He is an incredible pass rusher from any spot you put him on the field. And I think about the Eagles here. And I know the Cowboys would probably, rather just, take a worse offer. Maybe not. But they would trade him to the Eagles. I know that. But I also know teams in 2024 are not as bound to this kind of stuff as maybe they used to be. Like, I would never trade with that team. I mean, Donovan McNabb got traded on Easter all those years ago to the Washington, then the Redskins, the Commanders now. He got traded within the division. I think teams are conditioned to take the best offer now more than maybe they used to be. Now, if it's a tie, if the Titans, I'm just using a random team, and the Eagles offer the same amount for Micah Parsons, are the Cowboys going to trade him within the division? Probably not. My guess is they're going to want to trade him to the AFC if they do trade him. But let's just suspend disbelief for a second and say that something's going on here between the Cowboys and Micah Parsons, and he's available. That kind of pass rush is available. That's where the Eagles have to go and make the big splash. That's where they have to go. And this has been an odd offseason where they've had some moments here where you think, okay, they're all in to win a Super Bowl, signing Saquon Barkley, giving a running back a 3-year contract. Okay, that's a win now kind of move. Then they trade Hassan Reddick for a future conditional 3 a couple years from now from the New York Jets. And that's not a win now move at all. So if the Eagles are interested in winning now and trying to win a Super Bowl right now, they got to pick up the phone and see what's going on down there and make a significant offer. Now, there's different ways that you could go about this. For years, I've been saying that if I could go back in time, I would have drafted Parsons over Devontae Smith. Would the Eagles entertain the idea of swapping Devontae for Parsons? I know a lot of people would give pushback on that. I would go with the guy that's the better and more impactful player. That's Micah Parsons. That's not my first instinct. I'd rather trade picks and keep Devontae Smith to keep this team together, the best players they have. But that's an interesting kind of juxtaposition. Same draft class. Neither have been paid yet. They're kind of linked in that draft forever. Maybe Dallas would rather go with the offensive route, and the Eagles could kind of even out their team because a lot of their resources are on the offensive side versus the defensive side. That's one idea. Another idea is to try to take a guy that was drafted last year, and maybe he would entice the Cowboys. And what I mean by that is Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith might still be a good player. I was very enamored last spring during the draft period. I liked him. And then into his first offseason as an Eagle, or first, mini camp as an Eagle, into training camp. I liked what I saw to Nolan Smith when Hugh and I got to be at training camp, a handful of times over the summer. And then I thought he played relatively well in the preseason. And I was like, this guy's going to be really good. And then he wasn't. Now, how much was the shoulder injury he suffered in August that maybe gave him trouble all year? It set him back. Certainly possible. I still think Nolan Smith's going to be a good football player. But if the Cowboys have some interest in Nolan Smith, who's, again, just last year's first-round pick, number 30, and he comes cheap for some time now because of his rookie contract, you may be able to work with something there. What about Nolan Smith and a first-round pick? Or Nolan Smith, a first-round pick, and then they could swap over that Jets conditional pick in a couple years. I mean, that's a deal I would absolutely do if I'm the Eagles. To take back Micah Parsons, Nolan Smith, who, again, is a major question mark right now, the Jets pick, which is basically what they got, the Reddick trade, and then this year's first-round pick, the number 22 pick. You're not going to find anything there that is close to what Micah Parsons will bring right now. And I don't think you're really upsetting the apple cart of the future anyway. I mean, that Jets pick could be something pretty good. It also could be a 3, and maybe they're a decent team still then, and that's like the number 90 pick in the draft or the 75th pick in the draft. It's not going to change the franchise. So that is another way to go about it, that, okay, Cowboys, would you take Nolan Smith, this year's first rounder, and that Jets conditional pick? I mean, really, in terms of assets you kind of look at the Eagles board of assets right now moving forward, the only thing they're giving up that you feel strongly about is this year's 22nd pick. But even that, you look at all these mock drafts, and we've done Mock Draft Mania on WIP Daily, it doesn't feel like there's a slam dunk, no doubt about it, star player there at 22. It's like, well, they could trade up. They could take an offensive lineman and maybe be the heir apparent to Lane. They could take a defensive back and see if he could fit into the mix right away. There's not that slam dunk pick. I don't think Brock Bowers could be there. He would be a slam dunk pick. So that's another idea. Nolan Smith, this year's number 22 overall pick, and that Jets conditional pick coming up in a couple of years. Heck, maybe the Cowboys view the long-term outlook of the Jets pretty poorly with an old Aaron Rodgers, a coach on the hot seat, a GM on the hot seat. Maybe they'd short the Jets and take the pick. The other one, and this would probably be more seamless and easy, but comes with obviously a lot of risk, is a pair of ones. I think that might be where the baseline of a trade comes down. That's why I think Nolan Smith and a potential 2 down the line from the Jets, that almost equals a 1. I mean, if the Cowboys like Nolan Smith and still believe there's something really big there, that almost could be like your second 1 along with the 22nd pick. Or this might just be a clean and easy, a pair of number 1s. Would you trade this year's number 1 and next year's number 1 for Micah Parsons? I would, because I believe you put Parsons on this team on the other side of Bryce Huff, and you have those 2 guys as your edge rushers, and the coaching changes at the coordinator spots for the Eagles work, the Eagles are not going to be a bad football team this year. And I was going to say, that's, of course, assuming Jalen Hurts stays healthy. But I like the Kenny Pickett trade. I think the Eagles could stay afloat even if there was some sort of injury to Hurts and not be a bad team. Because when you trade 2 1s or you trade 1s, the fear is, what if we have a terrible year? Like, go look at last year, the Panthers and the Bears. Now, the Panthers probably should have saw this coming because they weren't a good team to begin with, and Bryce Young I never saw it. But that's an all-time bad trade because they traded away basically the number 1 overall pick for Bryce Young. Terrible trade. If Caleb Williams hits, we'll talk about it for years to come. Now, if the Eagles trade for Parsons and Jalen got hurt, or they had a 5-win season and it turned into the 6th pick in the draft or 5th pick in the draft, it's like, oh, man, that's a bad trade. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's enough competence here on the lines. There's enough competence on the offensive side that they'll be a pretty good to good football team, almost no matter what happens, if you add Parsons to this defense. Obviously, it would be the same effect next year and the same risk next year with the 1. Actually, it wouldn't be. Sorry, excuse me. Giving up this year's 1, you know what that is, 22, and next year's. It'd be a 1-year risk, this year's risk, this season. As long as the Eagles got Parsons signed and they had at least a decent season, I don't think we'd regret this trade. I don't think we would look back and be like, oh, my goodness, they get the 22nd pick. And, like, what's the Eagles' floor next year with Micah Parsons? 7 or 8 wins? If things go bad and they lose Hurts for some time, 7 wins, they'd have, like, the 11th pick in the draft. Would you give up the 22nd and the 11th pick next year? And that's worst-case scenario for Parsons? I would. Best-case scenario, the Eagles are in the Super Bowl. And we're talking about the 32nd pick in the draft or the 31st pick in the draft. Micah Parsons is an amazing player. And if you go back and look at the Dallas Cowboys' defensive ranks since he got in the league, he changed their defense almost overnight. I know Dan Quinn got imported there, but he basically changed their defense. They were a bad defense for a few years before Micah Parsons, and he got there, and the Cowboys have been nothing but a good defense since he got there. At times, a very good defense. I know playoff time, he hasn't shown up the way the Cowboys probably want him to, and maybe the NFL wants to make him a face of the league, and Jordan Love threw all of them last year. But I'm not putting that just on one guy. Micah Parsons, if the Eagles knew and the whole league knew that he could rush the quarterback the way he can, there's no way he lasts the pick he lasts to in that draft. He's a top 5 pick. And now it may be an opportunity to get him right now think about how quickly we move on from the Hassan Reddick thing. Hassan Reddick, oh, he's a Jet. The Eagles have Micah Parsons. Parsons off of one edge, Bryce Huff off the other edge. It's the best edge rushing combination in the NFL. It would make life hell for whoever the Commanders are going to draft to play, make life hell for Dak Prescott in Dallas, and it would make life hell, obviously, for Daniel Jones or Drew Lock, whatever the heck the Giants do in a quarterback. It could change the Eagles. I feel like there's a weird vibe with this team, like they're trying to mix now in the future, the coach, the coordinators, weird vibe heading into this season. You had a player like Parsons on the defensive side, it changes things. That's how great of a player he is. And I know it would be weird. I know it because anyone's done here in Philadelphia is not like this guy. From the minute he put a Dallas Cowboys uniform on, he was ripping Jalen a couple years ago. It's not him, it's the team. I get it. It'd be weird. But you know what? Sometimes when there's an opportunity to get a great player that was once a rival, you just do it. At one point, Bryce Harper was a young punk on the Nationals that Cole Hamels beamed. And then you know what? He became a Philly. And I'm not saying the Parsons thing is apples and, it's not perfect comparison, but there's something there. I mean, the guys at Sixers game wearing Sixers jerseys. I think he wants to be here anyway. He played at Penn State. I always thought he's kind of jealous he's not here, Micah Parsons, and that the Eagles get all this love in a place, near where he used to be. Barkley's here now, another Penn State guy. Howie Roseman. If this guy was on any other team, I think every Eagles fan would say, go get Micah Parsons if he's available. But because he's a Cowboy, it's like, no, yes, you go get Micah Parsons. Listen, of the 3 trades I threw out, I would do the 1 this year, Nolan Smith and the Jets pick. That's my number 1 choice. I would do the 2 1s. And then if it came down to it, would I swap Devontae? I would. I appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following WIP Daily. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Should the Eagles trade for Micah Parsons? I believe they should. It would change the franchise. We'll talk soon.